Hello everybody, I'm Amy with AJ's Vintage Designs. I'm a brand ambassador here at Dixie Belle Paints, and we're going to talk about a quick, easy beginner's project. Now, if you're new to painting furniture, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to get your feet wet. This is a jewelry box. A jewelry box is a great way to start to learn to paint furniture. It's a small piece, it's easy to tackle, and you get the fundamentals and the basics of painting furniture. So I'm going to show you an easy way to do this little jewelry box, and we're going to be putting some transfers on it to dress it up. And we're going to be using Dixie Belle silk. And the reason I say that's for beginners is that it has a stain blocking primer already built in. So I don't have to do any special priming or anything to this piece. I'm going to be using silk in the color Saltwater today. But the first thing you need to do is you need to clean your piece really well. I have Dixie Belle's White Lightning already diluted in a 32-ounce bottle. I put a tablespoon of the cleaner in here. You can use a half a tablespoon, however strong you want to make it. I usually put anywhere from a half a tablespoon to a full tablespoon per 32-ounce container. Okay, so all you have to do is spray it on. You want to make sure that you're cleaning with a paint prep cleaner. This is a TSP based cleaner, and that's going to help prepare your piece to be painted. So I'm getting it covered with the solution. Now I'm going to wipe around, get all that old grease, dirt, and grime removed from my piece. Okay, you can see how filthy it was. You do not want to paint over all that dirt. That is a beginner's, that's one thing you need to make sure that you know, is you can't paint over dirt. Okay, so I'm going to get this, all those grooves. Don't forget to open your doors and get all of your ledges. Okay, now that we've got it cleaned, an important step you don't want to skip is you want to make sure that you rinse your cleaner off. I'm just using straight water. I'm going to spray it down with some water. I don't want to leave any of that cleaning residue on there because then my paint will be sticking to the residue and not to my furniture piece. So give it a good rinse. Make sure your rag is coming clean. Okay, so now that I have it all clean, the next step you want to do is give it a good scuff sand. Now I'm not saying you're not sanding off all of this finish. You just need to give it a little bit of a scuff sand to knock some of that gloss off, because we're using silk. And I'm just using a 220 grit sanding sponge. Giving it a good once over. And you notice you won't see much of a difference to your piece when you're doing a scuff sanding, but I am taking a little bit of that finish off. We're just basically knocking off that high gloss and giving some tooth for the paint to adhere to. So just giving it a quick scuff sand. Okay, now that I gave it the little scuff sand, you're going to want to make sure that you rinse off that dust debris as well. So I'm taking a clean paper towel. Always going to a clean paper towel. When you first rinse, you take a clean towel. You don't use your cleaner, the rag that you use for your cleaner. You always go grab something new. That's how we're keeping it clean. Okay? Wipe off all that sanding residue. Okay. Now, if you want to tackle this, you can take your jewelry box apart. Now this one, I could remove these screws and pull the whole piece apart and paint each individual piece if I want to. If you're just practicing and you want a quick makeover, then you can leave it together. But just know that you can take it apart, but if you do, make sure you put the screws in a separate little Tupperware dish or in a bag so that you don't lose them and you keep them in one spot, because jewelry part pieces are not the same as regular furniture pieces. Like this hardware is glued on. It doesn't come out, and there's no way to get to it from the inside. These little tiny screws right here don't come out either. They are felted in on the other side, but that is for the hardware. So just know all these little itty bitty screws and stuff that are in here, you just don't want to lose them. Okay, the reason I'm using silk and I chose this color is because I'm going to be using the Vintage Floral Transfer from Dixie Belle's Bells and Whistles line. And there's some great options in here, but see there's a lot of black and white. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a lot of the black and white on here, and then I'm going to be adding some flowers. And I want to show you the reason I want to do this black and white. See, it has colored flowers. It's got some beautiful ones, all sizes for jewelry boxes. They're great for jewelry boxes. Look at all these sizes. See, they're small, and I might use some of the colorful ones too. But this is what I'm gravitating towards. Look at that little boot. So that is the whole reason I want to do this sheet, is because of that boot. And I might put some of these black and white flowers on here. But when you look at a transfer and you see that it's black and white, always pull it and see if it's transparent or if it's white. See, that boot is transparent, you can see through it. So that's why I'm doing this saltwater. That is a gorgeous one, and I've been excited to use it. So I'm gonna put a coat of silk on here. Now, silk is not a chalk paint. It's a mineral paint, but it's not a chalk paint. It has your stain blocking primer built in, equivalent to 1 coat. And it also has your top coat built in, equivalent to 1 coat. So we recommend doing 2 coats of the silk on your piece. That gives you the protection of equivalent to 2 coats of your stain blocking primer and 2 coats of sealer. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And you don't use water with this. Usually with the chalk mineral based paints, we use water when we're applying it to thin it out. You don't use water with this. I'm gonna be using my small oval. And I'm doing that because you use a little bit more paint on your brush than you would normally do with a chalk paint, because we're not using water. So you put it on, you don't overwork it, and you always go back with long, even strokes. Now, the thing with the silk too is you want to wait 2 to 4 hours between coats. All depends. Humidity and climate has a huge impact on any type of paint that you use. So if you're in a humid area, give it more time. If you're in a dry area, you won't need as much time. But 2 hours minimum, but up to 4 hours is what we recommend between coats. So I'm just going to get this coat on here. This is a beautiful, very clean, bright white. And I think it's really gonna pop with all these black outline transfers. I will open these doors last and get all the openings. This goes on so smooth. You're gonna be tempted because of the coverage. You're gonna be tempted to do just 1 coat. Don't be tempted to leave it at 1 coat, because you want that protection of 2 coats of clear coat and your 2 coats of your stain blocking primer. Especially, look at, I'm painting over an orange piece with white. So just for the sake of blocking those bleed throughs, you're gonna want 2 coats. Okay, so the top section is already done, and it goes on nice and smooth. Now, I personally like to use a synthetic brush when it comes to a smooth finish. If I want more of a textured finish and more of that chalky type look finish, then I use a natural bristle brush. But I like to use a good quality synthetic for a smooth finish. Getting my edges here. I wanna make sure you don't get any drips. You get in those areas that are hard to reach. I'm not worried about painting my hardware because I'm gonna paint it anyway. I'll probably be using gilding wax. So I'm gonna paint it anyway. So I'm getting in all those little nooks and crannies, but I'm not going to leave those areas messy like that. You can see it's kind of messy there. I'm always gonna come back and smooth long strokes to clean that up. Even though it's somewhat self-leveling, you still want to do your best to give it a smooth finish. Just getting into those dry grains right there, and then long strokes. Okay, you don't want to overwork this paint because it's not a chalk paint. So look at that finish already. I do know that I'm going to be doing 2 coats because I want that benefit of that stain blocking primer in there. Let me get my sides. Okay, so I'm gonna finish getting this first coat on, and then we'll come back for the next step. So first thing I wanna do is decide where I want it. I want this one in the center. Eyeball to make sure it's straight and it's in the center. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna take a piece of painter's tape so I can keep it in in its location that I want it. Okay, once again, I can line that up where I want it. That looks
pretty centered. You can use a ruler to measure it out. I'm gonna eyeball it. Okay, here we go. And you're gonna wanna tape it down. That's gonna keep it from moving once you get started. So I'm just gonna look at it real quick, make sure I got it on straight. Okay, now these are a little bit different than Dixie Belle's usual transfers. What you wanna do is, there's more glue on it than the other ones, so you can, this isn't mandatory, but you can give it a little bit of heat to soften that glue a little bit with a hair dryer, or I'm gonna use a heat gun real quick. Okay. Very little. That's just to kind of warm up that glue a little bit. And like I said, you can use a hair dryer. I want to burnish all the way around with the little stick that comes with the kit. Get all those edges. Now, if you've cut your transfer too close to an image, you can lay down a piece of plastic. You got some plastic around, you can lay down some plastic and you can burnish. And this plastic is actually protecting my paint. So if I have cut my image a little close to the plastic, just put down another little sheet of plastic. If you don't have a spare sheet from another transfer, put down a little bit of wax paper or any type of plastic paper that you have on hand. And that's just along those edges where I'm very close to my paint so I don't scratch my paint. I did cut this image very close. So I don't want to scratch my paint, so I'm just going to give it a little right there with the stick. Okay, now what you're going to want to do, get this where you can see it, is I want to get my finger underneath while I burnish. Now if you can't get your plastic up, just use a little bit of tape and that will pull a corner up for you so you're not like digging at it with your fingernail. Okay, and I'm just going to burnish and pull it up with my finger behind as I go. That way I can see that the whole image is being released. It'll move very quickly for you. Just burnish and rub your finger behind. See how I'm pulling that paper up while I'm burnishing, okay? If for chance you pull it up and part of the image is still on it, lay it back down and burnish again. But adding that little bit of heat also just makes it for an easier release. And having that tape on here is also holding it so that if I actually move the plastic, I'm not moving my image. It's just gonna make it a little bit easier. Okay, I'm gonna take this tape up now that I'm far enough along. So I'm lifting and burnishing right in front of it with a stick as I pull that paper up. Just making sure that my image is adhering to my furniture piece. And I have one little piece right here where I see it wants to pull up with me. There we go. Got my fingers behind here, helping guide that paper up as I press down on the other side to release that image. Okay, there we go. And the next step is to burnish with your fingers. You're gonna go from the center out, pushing down all those edges. Make sure there's no bubbles, no excess glue along the edge. Just roll that right off. And that also helps with having no halo. Okay, there we go. Now you can give it additional burnishing. You can use a sanding sponge a gentle burnishing pad. Working from my center out. Just giving it a little burnish. There we go. Okay, that one's done. Now I can continue on and keep adding more images, okay? Okay, I'm going to continue to keep putting the transfers on, and I'll come back when it's time to clear coat when I have them all placed.
There we go. The only thing I have left to do is now I need to clear coat this with a clear coat and satin is the preferred way to seal this. And then I can keep going and embellish this piece with maybe some gilding wax or some Dixie Belle mousse. But first of all, I just need to get my clear coat on here. That will lock down that transfer and protect it. Even though I painted with silk, I know silk has a built-in top coat and a built-in stain blocking primer, but you still need to apply a clear coat over your transfers. So even though we don't have to necessarily seal silk because it already has the sealer built in, we need to seal the transfers. Okay, now she's all sealed up. The transfers are protected. This is the Vintage Floral, one of the new transfers out from Dixie Belle. Vintage Floral, isn't she pretty? And I love doing the little pops of color of adding the little tiny flowers. Since they have lots of flowers in different sizes, that's the great thing. You can pick and choose placements. See, lots of little flowers, added them together. Black and whites, added some colorful flowers in the boots. So this is very flexible, lots of options. So the only thing I have to do now is let this dry, and then after it's dried, I'm gonna give it a few hours. I'm gonna be adding either gilding wax or gemstone mousse to my hardware to give it a little pop of color, and that's about it. I'll put pictures at the end so you can see how she turned out. This is Dixie Belle Silk Paint. That's their all-in-one paint. It has the stain blocking primer and the clear coat built in, but you still need to seal your transfers. Just remember that. Okay. So my name is Amy, I'm with AJ's Vintage Designs. Make sure you click on that bell down below and subscribe, and that way you're notified every time a new video comes up. And all the products will be listed down in the description box as well. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.